Welcome to another composition video. I thought it'd be interesting to make another video about composition from a new single that's just come out. It's a lot different to the previous single. It was composed in a similar way, and I think this could be a cool example to show how flexible a melody can be. So what we're going to do is dive into the original composition, what it sounds like, have a quick look into the project files, look at things from a music production perspective, see how the instrumentation was chosen, and just kind of pick out some of the key points that led to the final track. If you haven't heard the single yet, it's called Bio Moroder. You can listen to it for free on YouTube. You can stream it on Spotify or Apple Music. If you haven't heard it yet, I will play some clips in this video so that you've got enough context to understand what we're discussing. So as always with my music, this one was composed on guitar as well. I'm still using that weird tuning CFA GGE, and that's allowed me to create a lot of melodies that I think I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So I'll quickly play through this one for you now. It actually sounds really nice played on guitar with a lot of reverb. Kind of reminds me a bit of the XX and that kind of style. I think in a different environment this melody could be applied really successfully to that kind of lo-fi indie style. So this is the project file. One of my more organized files makes a change, although kind of let down by the track listing here. No coloring, limited naming, could do better. Everything else though, not looking bad. By the way, if you can hear whirring in the background, it's my laptop fan. Apparently we're about to take off, head to the moon. So how does the melody that we just saw a minute ago make its way into a track like this? One thing I chose to do in this track was not persist the melody through every single section. One thing I like to do in a lot of my tracks is take a melody that I like and that I think is pretty good and use it sparingly rather than repeatedly. So for example, in some of my tracks, I'll use a melody just once and then it'll go. It's not going to return in the chorus, it's not going to return in the outro. In this particular one, we can hear it in the intro and then in the outro. So I'll play a part of one of those sections for you right now. This is towards the end of the intro. So that's the same melody I was playing on guitar. What I'm using for that is a VST plugin called Cypher 2. I got this plugin bundled with my Rolly Songmaker kit. Don't believe it's free. Ordinarily you would have to pay for it, but it was included with that purchase. It's based on a preset called MT Resonant Boom Bira 5D. I don't know what that naming's about. This largely uses the preset, and I'm a bit guilty of doing that sometimes. Of course, I do experiment with tweaks every time, but this particular VST has quite a lot of good preset sounds which I feel are unique enough to use in tracks. And of course, once you're applying EQ and effects on top of that, you're going to end up with something unique anyway. And the way that I have tweaked that is in the second tier repetitions of that melody in the intro, we're changing to add some delay. So it goes from this to this. And you'll notice that a lot of that delay is quite wide in the mix. Looking at how that's been worked into the track overall, you can see that there's some automation on the volume here. The reason being, when the delay kicks in, the overall volume increases, and I didn't want to peak the volume at that part of the intro. And it dips again in the final repetition here, very specifically because there is a second instrument playing that same melody. So of course, resulting in another volume spike, I had to reduce the lead volume to make sure that the introduction of that new sound didn't cause everything to build too high. So the drop is impending at this point. There's only one repetition left. If we go too high in the volume, drop's going to happen, and it's going to go like this, and it's going to be really disappointing. So the second melody that overlays that sounds like this. Also quite wide in the mix, deliberately so that the main lead stays central, provides focus for the track, and then there's other supplementary sounds that complement that at the edges. So the combination of those sounds like this. There's also a riser in there. I'll leave this to play through just after the drop so that you can hear how the riser impacts the overall volume. So you can see why the automated volume dip is probably going to be necessary there. Just looking at volume automation for a moment, there is quite a lot of that in this track. You'll frequently find you need to automate volume, even just small amounts, 2 dB for example, when you're moving from section to section of a track. New elements come in, elements pop out. Sometimes you will want to dip the volume overall, sometimes you want to increase it overall. A lot of the time you want to keep it consistent. And so automation is a very good way of doing that. It can be a bit of a pain, I find, finding that balance. One of the tools I use in FL Studio is the dB meter. So if I just play a section of the track here again, you'll see the dB meter fly up on the left hand side. And you can see there we're predominantly at -6. I don't master my own tracks. I tend to shoot for -6 as my max volume. So there will be certain parts in this track. I'll try and find one now. For example, this break, potentially, where the overall volume is for the most part lower than -6. There may be some transients that do actually go up and get close to that, but the majority of the instruments are not going to hit that number. Mostly sitting just above -12 there. It doesn't feel like the track's empty at that stage. There's still enough presence and enough volume, but it's lighter overall than the busier parts of the track. There's two other areas where that particular melody that we spoke about has been integrated into the track here. One of them is in the harp work that's in the introduction prior to the full melody being played through. So you can see here we've got a number of bars which feature variations of that melody played using harp samples, some with notes removed, gradually adding more and more as it goes on. So I'll just play that quickly here. Some automation on this also creating that kind of wobbling sound towards the end of the bar. So you can probably recognize a lot of those notes from that melody. It's really just a rearrangement of that to try to create something that sounds somewhat random. There's not really much pace to it that you can hold on to, but it's based on the same melody, it's in the same key. And so it works as a kind of build-up and preparation to that main melody coming in. And we don't see it again at all until the outro, where it's finally used with the beat underneath. I'll play it first before I say anything about it. Similar thing there in terms of the layering. We've got two repetitions which are kind of like chopped up versions of that main melody, and then once again in the second two repetitions we're introducing that same kind of floaty pad, as I like to call it, which just adds something extra to the overall texture. On its own it's not much, but I think it works really well in the mix. And at the end we just let it roll off because there's a huge amount of reverb on there. And I really like the way that just kind of floats away rather than coming to an abrupt ending where it's just over. And in terms of the melody, that's pretty much everywhere that it's used. Of course there's a whole track in between that with the verse and the chorus. I'm not going to go into the entire composition and arrangement now. I'll be happy to do that in a future video if there is any interest. In terms of any other interesting parts to this mix, a lot of the other parts of the track of course are based around that initial composition. The bass line, for example, have a quick listen to that. Same key, similar usage of notes to the melody, but different enough. And it's all kind of based around that, really. Even the horns and the strings that you hear throughout the chorus, again, sit straight on top of that, and it's kind of just a very standard upward progression. Very simple but very effective in conjunction with the percussion and the bass line as well. And I think that's probably as far as we'll go for this particular one. If you see anything in this project file that looks weird or interesting, do leave a comment. I'll be happy to explain what's going on. There's probably as many bad things in this project file as there are good things, but I'll be more than happy to dive into any of that. And I think that covers everything. So, as always, if you have any questions about the production of this particular track, or production in general, feel free to ask me, I'm always happy to answer. Thanks for all your feedback on the single so far, glad you're enjoying it. If you haven't heard it yet, please check it out. I've got more new music on the way which I'm really looking forward to getting released. In the meantime, if there's any other behind the scenes information that you want to hear about or see, send me a suggestion, I'll be more than happy to put something together for you. As always, thanks for your support and thanks for watching.